Hello, welcome to my live stream this afternoon. I am happy that you're joining me. Welcome to those of you who are joining me in the Christian Women Speakers Network, as well as those of you who are joining me on my personal Facebook page. Happy Wednesday. I actually did not remember that today was Wednesday. I set up a meeting late last night and I booked it for Thursday, but in my mind, I'm thinking today's Thursday. Wake up, go to the meeting room, nobody's there, and I realized I had the wrong meeting date. I know I'm not alone. Y'all have done that before. You're extra excited about things to come, and then you over prepare for the meetings that you are supposed to attend. So that happened to me, but that's okay because it allowed me to show up today and be able to share with you something that a lot of you don't know, and that's about my journey and how and why I'm so passionate about helping you to find the boldness, find the courage, and find just the excitement in sharing your story. Hello. I promise I am going to figure out a way to be able to see who is coming in the room and to shout you out. But I do see you. I know that you're here, and thank you so much for joining me on this live. So let's get right on into it. So first of all, I am Chantel. Of course, you're on my Facebook page, so you know that. Those of you who are joining me here, you may not know, I'm Chantel, and I am a publisher, a best-selling author, and most importantly, I am a wife and a mother of two beautiful children. And those things are the reason why I do what I do, the reason why I show up, the reason why I really am committed to being on this journey of imparting into those lives, those of you who have been a part of our community here in Trinidad, and those of you who are a part of our virtual community. They are the reason why we do what we do, because it's all about a legacy and having an impact. So that aside, why specifically am I committed to helping you share your story is because I truly think that every great story should be told. You know, when I was 6 years old, my mother, God rest her soul, she was my biggest inspiration. I looked up to that lady, even though she was only 4'11". Maybe she hit 5'1" at some point in my life, but she was someone that I really looked up to. And when I was 6 years old, one of the most devastating things happened to our family. We lost my big brother, Donovan. He died. And it was the saddest thing. I mean, imagine being 6 years old and watching the person who's your hero, the person who is the matriarch in your family, the strongest person you know, break down into being someone who is barely recognizable. And that's what happened to my mother when my brother passed away. And it was months went by, and my mother would she would just break down and crying in the middle of the day. And as a young person watching it, I'm just like, what's going on? I couldn't truly wrap my head around the trauma and the devastation that as a mother she must have faced. And as I witnessed her slowly morph into a new person, I was able to be there every step of the way. One moment, you know, she would be crying on the floor, weeping in the corner, and just absolutely devastated. And then the next moment, I would see her just stand up a little taller, and then that stand would turn into a crawl, and then that crawl would eventually turn into a walk, and then suddenly I saw her run. And when I tell you, man, what an experience that was, seeing someone who you're used to always seeing going and showing up have to go through that process of falling and then walking again. How many of you have been there before? Maybe that's happened in your own life where you've experienced some type of trauma, maybe the loss of a loved one, maybe a divorce, and it takes the wind out of you. And the whole world stops, and it's only by the grace of God that you're able to pick yourself up again and begin to run. And that's what I saw my mother do. And as a child watching that, I thought, man, how strong do you have to be to scrape yourself out of a downhill and then rise again? And not only was my mother able to rise, but I witnessed her being an advocate for those who were not able to be an advocate for themselves. You see, my brother, the reason why he died at the age of 18 was not any fault of his own, but he was actually the victim of racism. He was 18, getting in a lot of trouble. He went to jail, and in the jail, the prison officers denied him of something so important, which was his life-saving medicine. And he ended up, Stephanie, he ended up September having an asthma attack in jail, and he died. And so my mother had to deal with, first of all, her oldest son. Although he was so young, he was still her oldest baby, passing away in an unfortunate circumstance. And then still try to figure out how she would get the strength to raise us being the other children that she had. She had 4 of us at home waiting, young, waiting for their mom to be able to provide again. And so I share that story with you because in that process of me witnessing my mother's transformation, I was able to see her be an advocate for those who didn't have a voice. So she took me on different rallies and protests in Baltimore, Maryland, where she would advocate and try to get freedom for those who were illegally imprisoned. She would take me on those demonstrations in Philadelphia as we gathered as a group and held up signs and protested against the injustices that were the call of the day. And as this young, impressionable child, I was able to absorb one important principle, Jasmine, and that was, even when it hurts, even when it's inconvenient, you have to stand up. And there are some of you who are in the middle of a devastating situation. You're in the middle of a life-altering inconvenience. Perhaps you've lost your home, or maybe you've even lost someone that's close to you. And the only thing that's standing in the way from you being that blob on the floor, that blob of grief, that blob of devastation, and you being the phoenix that rises, is going to be you remembering that there are people watching you. I know for a fact that my mother got courage to stand again, Anastasia, when she saw my young, innocent face looking at her. She knew that she couldn't just stand in and wallow in her situation, that she had to get up again because there were people counting on her. And I'm so glad that she did. And because of that, I now have this unbelievable conviction. And first of all, I didn't know where it came from. It really took me like last year when I was doing an interview for me to realize, like, okay, why am I really passionate about being a publisher? Why am I really passionate about helping people to share their story? And then I remembered that 6-year-old Chantel, that had it not been for my mother being the voice of those who were wanting to share their stories but couldn't because they were locked in jail or they didn't have any way to express themselves, had it not been for me witnessing my mother being that person, then I would not have been, or I would not be the person that I am today, which is an advocate. Hi, Jeff. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of this conversation. And so I want you to remember that you have people watching you. You have your mom watching you. You have your daughters, you have your sons, you have your aunts, you have your sisters, you have your brothers, you have the world watching you and waiting for you to speak up and share your story. You know, there's some of you right now who's saying, you know, it's just not a good time. It's just not the right time for me to be a speaker. It's not the right time for me to be an author. I'm going to wait. Maybe I'll wait until the children go back to school, or I'll wait until the bills get paid before I invest in this program and how to do this thing. Or maybe I'll wait till I get that certificate, because as talented people, one of the greatest things that we do to keep us from being even better is that we pile a lot of excuses onto our plate to try to make it seem like we're in action, but really we're just procrastinating. So perhaps you're waiting to develop that website, or you're waiting to get more followers on Instagram or Facebook. But there is no time like the present. There are people watching. And if Corona didn't teach us anything, it taught us this fact, that our time does not belong to us. That in an instant, things can absolutely change. Stop waiting. You see, when I decided to write my book, it reaffirmed my purpose. My book actually is called On a Mission, 21 Secrets for College Success. And it was the first book that I wrote in 2015. And that book then went on to be a bestseller. And it is the reason why I do what I do today, which is to publish other people's books. And so if you decide to wait because things aren't convenient or it's not the right time, guess what? There will be people whose lives may not be saved because you decided not to speak up. You see, there are people waiting on the other side of your decision. There were so many students waiting for me to write this book that only until I wrote it did I realize. They would come up to me and say, Coach Chantel, oh my gosh, thank you for writing that chapter on how to study abroad. Thank you for sharing with me the story about how you were able to travel to over 11 countries before you turned 21 years old. And they only appreciated that part of the story because they realized where I came from. I didn't come from money. I didn't come from privilege. But see, when you are being that coach, when you are being that advisor, when you are being that counselor, guess what? People don't want to just see the glitz and the glamour. They want to know the whole you. And it's only when you put those elements into a book, when you package it, when you have the different stages of editing, and I get excited talking about this, forgive me, but you have a developmental editor looking at your writing, looking at your prose and looking at your stories, lines, and all of that. When you have those expertise helping you actually produce a product that people can fully appreciate, that's when you're in gear to change lives. Wow. Writing your book, my friends, will absolutely do what it did for me. It'll give you focus. You know, I was actually at a point in my life where I had shiny object syndrome. How many of you have been there? That anything that looked like it could be a glimmer of success or an opportunity or make money, I was there. I was in network marketing and doing this product and that product, and I realized, like, look, I need to get a focus. And when I decided to focus on a market that I was already serving, which was college students, because I was a college professor, that's when things started to come together. So on the other side of your decision to write a book is going to be your absolute confirmation of what you were born to do. Somebody write that down. On the other side of your decision to write a book will be the confirmation of what it is that you were born to do. I know for a fact that I was born to speak to young people and to provide strategies. Not that my strategies are the best. Our strategies aren't the best, but they do work. I was supposed to provide strategies to them to help them live a life that they can look back on 10 years from now and say, wow, I'm really proud of the decisions that I was able to make. You see, writing your book will give you a focus. So absolutely start that business. Absolutely join that program. Maybe you even want to go back to school. That's fantastic. However, when you write your book, you'll be able to have what's called tunnel vision. That although, Carmel, you can speak to everybody, there are certain people that you are called to for a season. It'll give you focus. You see, I want to make sure that I leave you with this. Most people stop being in action because they're afraid to be alone. I'll never forget when I was writing my book in 2015, and I wonder if my sister, she's watching this, I wonder if she remembers. She and I, we stayed up all night for several days trying to write the chapters of this book. Because mind you, it's 21 secrets, Marshall, so it's not like 4 or 5 secrets, it's 21. So that was intense. We had to come up with 21 reasons why students could be successful, and that was a labor of love. However, I was happy that I didn't have to do it by myself. How many of you love when you have a partner in the process, an accountability partner that can wake you up, slap you in the back of your head and say, hey, you got 15 more secrets to go, Chantel? That's the best. And, you know, one thing that this whole COVID-19 experience has taught us is that we do have communities. You can get an accountability partner from a Facebook group. You can join a networking group or organization online. You can call somebody like me and say, Chantel, hey, I'm ready. What do I need to do next? Don't let the lack of support keep you from doing what you know you're supposed to do. There are people waiting on the other side of your decision. And for those of you who are thinking that this isn't for you and, oh, no one will ever want to read what I have to say, your life, Marshall, is a testimony that God specifically chose you for a divine reason. You didn't just all of a sudden pop up. I mean, I know there's some of you whose parents maybe didn't plan you, but we won't go there. But God planned you. And so I want you to remember that everything that you experience is a testimony that you are important. You are important. So no matter what your business is, or no matter what your industry is, your story is important enough to share and to tell. And I am so excited that you have heard this message and understand the whole picture of how I have gotten on this journey and why I'm so committed to helping you share your story, because I believe that every good story should be told. Remember this final point is that there will never be a perfect time, but the perfect time is now. And you don't have to wait until you have more degrees than a thermometer. You don't have to wait until you finish that course or learn more information. Do it now, because your audience awaits. As my friend Brian Old says, he says, speak up because your audience awaits. You can sow and serve at the same time. You don't need to learn anymore before you can go and do a Facebook Live or start a program or a mastermind community. No, you've done the work. And you can do that in the background. You can still sow and serve at the same time. But you must get started. You absolutely must get started. I'm so happy that my mother didn't wait until things were perfect in her life before she decided to be an activist. I'm so happy that she didn't wait till her broken heart was healed and she got over the trauma of my brother passing away before she decided to show up and speak to the injustices of our society. I'm so glad she didn't wait. She got started. And that's my encouragement to you is don't wait. There's that 6-year-old watching, just like I was watching my mom. And she's watching you. He's watching you. And I'm watching you. Blessings to each and every one of you. Stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you on the other side and being your partner in the process of you sharing your story with the world. Take care, guys. Do you have a story that you want to share? Perhaps you've even thought about putting your story into a book. If so, visit thebestsellersacademy.com and let us help you go from blank page to bestseller.